Good evening and welcome to this digitally enabled online meeting of the Council of the Municipality of North Perth, held on Monday, September 20th, 2021. I'm Mayor Todd Kasenberg and I'll call this meeting to order. I ask the Deputy Clerk to note our starting time for the minutes as 7 p.m. We wish to acknowledge that we are on the traditional land of the Anishinaabe peoples. We wish to recognize the long history of Indigenous peoples in Canada and show our respect to them today. We recognize their stewardship of the land. May we all live with respect on this land and live in peace and friendship. Tonight's meeting is being streamed live on the Municipality of North Perth YouTube channel and will be available there after the meeting as an archived video. Anyone who is invited to speak will be recorded, and their voice, image, and comments will form part of the live stream. The chair and/or the clerk have the discretion and authority at any time to direct the termination or interruption of live streaming. Such direction will only be given in exceptional circumstances where deemed relevant. Circumstances may include instances where the content of debate is considered misleading, defamatory, or potentially inappropriate to be published. Thank you. Welcome to those who are joining us via the YouTube channel. Welcome to councillors, staff, and delegates who will participate in this meeting. At this time, I call on you to maintain a state of decorum over the meeting. I don't believe we have any attendance regrets this evening. I believe we're all accounted for according to the clerk. Councillor Johnston may be a little bit late. Thank you. Let us move then to item 2.1 on our agenda pertaining to pecuniary interest. For the benefit of those unfamiliar with our council practices, provincial legislation requires councillors with a potential pecuniary or financial interest in any item at the council table to declare this interest and to remove her or himself from discussions and voting on the item. In accordance with recommended protocol at this time, I invite all councillors with perceived pecuniary interest, including those who have declared it in writing, to verbally advise the chair in public session and to submit documentation to this effect in writing to the clerk. Councillors are further reminded that should a potential conflict arise during the meeting, they may so declare and act at any point in the meeting. As of this moment, we have not received any pre-notifications of a declaration of conflict. But at this time, I invite councillors, if you have a declaration to make, please do so now. Fairfields, are we seeing any indication of that? No. All right, thank you. To explain our virtual processes then, I'll be systematically trying to seek consent from various councillors as movers and seconders of the various resolutions and bylaws that will be put before us tonight. I will do this to some degree alphabetically. Should a councillor not wish to respond to the request, they may say so, and I will move on to the next name on the alphabetical list. Regarding speaking to our business, councillors tonight will identify themselves through our conferencing technologies chat function. The clerk is assisting me tonight in maintaining the speaking order from this source. Councillors are allowed on their turn to deliver a primary question or comment and may make one supplemental without intervention from me. We will follow speaking order carefully. Any councillor wishing to have a second say will need to indicate again and go to the bottom of the speakers list. This is a process consistent with Robert's Rules of Order, which govern our proceedings. Councillors are reminded that if I believe you're not audible, I'll be the judge of that and call on you at the appropriate time. Councillors are further asked to maintain a mute state in the web conference until I have called upon you for a verbal reaction. Should any of your votes not show up in eScribe, our voting technology, I will call on you when things seem stalled to register a manual vote. At that time, take yourself off mute, answer yes or no on the motion, then return to mute. Regarding item 2.2 of our agenda, I have a motion before me for the adoption of the agenda for tonight's meeting. It reads simply that the agenda for tonight's meeting be approved. Councillor Richardson, let's start with you tonight. Would you serve as our mover for that?
I will move that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Councillor Rothwell, will you be our seconder for that?
I'll second the motion.
Thank you. Any discussion or debate? Seeing none, let's have that vote. That is carried, noting the absence of Councillor Johnston. That brings us then to item 3 on our agenda, the so-called consent agenda. These items are placed on our agenda because they are believed to be non-contentious, yet they warrant council's recognition and or action. Grouping them does tend to expedite our business. However, any councillor wishing to extract an item from the consent agenda for discussion, debate, and individual action may do so. There are 5 items on our consent agenda tonight, including the minutes of our last regular council meeting. Councillors, do any of you have a desire to extract any of these items for further discussion or action? We see anything, Clerk Fairfax? We're not seeing anything, so I have a motion for our consideration to receive 5 items and approve previous council minutes that reads as follows. Consent items 3.1 to 3.5 be received for information, and the minutes of the September 13th, 2021 regular council meeting be adopted. Councillor Seiler, will you serve as our mover for that one?
Yes, I will. Thank you.
Thanks. And Councillor Andreessen, will you be our seconder for that one?
Yes, I'll second that motion. Thank you.
Thanks. Any discussion or debate? Seeing none, let's have that vote. And that is carried. Thank you very much. That moves us along to agenda item number 4. At this time, we do not have any public meetings scheduled, but we do have one delegation scheduled for this meeting. To our delegates, council procedure, we provide a total time of 10 minutes for presentation and question and answers, unless that's waived by council. I tend to be a little bit lenient on that, but I appreciate my colleagues' times. It's my pleasure then to welcome John McVicker, a resident of Listowel, who wishes to address council about the holding of a world record-breaking hopscotch event in 2022. Mr. McVicker, the floor is yours. You might be on mute.
Unmute me. Am I unmuted?
You are. There you go. Welcome.
Okay. I'm going to speak for about 1 minute, and then our clerk will show a short video. I believe that's about 3 minutes. And then I will speak for another 2 to 3 minutes, and that will leave the rest open for questions. 8 years ago, the city of Kitchener set a new Guinness World Record for the longest picnic. The record had been previously held by a city in Germany, but Kitchener raised the bar in 2013 by having a communal gathering of approximately 4,000 people stretched over 2 kilometers along King Street. When my wife and I moved from Kitchener 12 years ago, and we would tell acquaintances where we lived, we'd often get, Listowel, where's that? I can imagine what it must be like to explain Moncton or Gowanstown to those big city folks. So here's how we would make it into the Guinness record book. And this could be the headline in the media across Canada next year. Can we see all of that? I think so. Set a record for having fun. Okay, can we see the video, please?
My job is to make college easier because students have a lot on their
Sorry, Coach.
plates.
Mike
my
Harper,
goodness,
an
we have
econ
to
major who
have
piles
the
on the
ad, too.
pressure.
Grammarly can help.
So I'm Tom Hughes. Coordinate and move hormone, and this is the launch
This
today.
is
so hopefully we've got fantastic
difficult
event
Yorkshire. Unless you
sunshine and
understand
great
Yorkshire
performance.
accents, you might not get much of it. But I want you to watch the hopscotch panels and the participants, the age of them.
Well, we need to beat 621. We are nudging 620, I think, at this moment in time, so we are on track to beat the world record. We just need to make sure that everyone's registered, everyone takes part, and I think we're good to go. We want everyone to get a little bit more physically active during Move More Month. Whether you're a workplace, we want you to get on board, get the Move More app downloaded, register a team, take on last year's winners Be Brawn, see if we can be the most active workplace. If you're in school, we want you to pledge. How are you as a school going to take part in Move More Month and get physically active? So yeah, just get involved, but it's the everyday for us. It's not running marathons, it's taking a little walk, you might be joining a class, just doing something a little bit different and doing a little bit more physical activity and building that into your daily lives.
I've just been informed that we've reached a number of 679 people here, so it's looking great. It's looking great for us to break this world record. We have to get it officiated so far, but so far so good. So grab a massive round of applause for all your participation, please.
Okay, that was an organization in Sheffield, England that encourages more physical activity. We could challenge Sheffield.
Hi, I'm Nathan
for the
McLaughlin.
great.
I'm Mark Bradshaw.
I'm Will Chan, and we're physical education teachers at Woodhaven Middle School, and we're here to show you some large group activities.
No. We don't want those guys.
No, it's okay. We're working on it, John. We're working on it.
Snake.
Hang on. We'll get there.
Is this using up my 10 minutes?
Not counted against your 10 minutes. On you go.
Okay. So we could challenge Sheffield for the greatest number of people playing hopscotch at the same time. The old record for the greatest number had been 615, held by a school in Georgia. However, in 2019, that athletic group in Sheffield that you just saw organized their challenge and won with 664. What would it mean for us to challenge Sheffield? How many hopscotch panels would we need? Hopscotch panels, as most of you know, contain squares from 1 to 10. They're approximately 3 meters long and 1 meter wide. And as you can see from the video, can be printed on vinyl, just like the material in a twister game. For a Guinness challenge, we would need 4 people standing at each panel, ready to play the game when the starting whistle goes. For Sheffield to win with 664 people, they would have had 166 game panels. Not very many, eh? Should we go for 200? When the whistle blows, 800 people would need to be standing around 200 panels, 4 at each panel. The whistle blows and the first person in each group of 4 begins to play. There is no need to be perfect at this. When all 4 in a group have completed their play, they indicate same to the judges. It is not a race to see who finishes first. It is merely a game to be played and completed. Obviously, space must be considered. Where can we accommodate the game, playing plus all of the vehicles we use to get to that location? Cost must also be considered, and that's why I'm with you this evening. Let me be clear, as so many politicians have been saying to us over the last 5 weeks. I do not expect council to pick up the tab for printing all of the panels. That will be looked after by sponsoring businesses who then get to keep the panels after we beat Sheffield. They will be about $100 each. What I do need to ask for is your coverage of the costs involved with Guinness in getting an official Guinness witness to our event. I'm asking for $12,000, which staff would control. am now open for questions.
Thank you, Mr. McVicker. Interesting opportunity indeed. Councillors, any of you have questions you'd like to ask at this time?
I think I saw some eyebrows raise.
Councillor Richardson is first.
And thank you very much. Thanks for your presentation, Mr. McVicker. I was just wondering if there's been any opportunities explored about using sponsorship to attract that Guinness person as compared to municipal funds. I'm just wondering for any other, I'm quite unfamiliar with the process to get a Guinness witness here, and where would that person come from that would warrant $12,000? I'm just curious as to that, and if sponsorship could be used for that as well.
I'd love to be able to try for that, but at this point, that wasn't on my radar. It was only because when I watched the video for the 5th or 6th time, I saw at the top of the panel, several panels, where the number 10 was the name of a business. And that's when I realized that, you know, some of our sign wars people might be excited about getting involved in this because you get to keep the panels after this is all over. Even youth organization, any organization could buy some panels because they get to keep them and use them for their own purposes after this is over. As far as the cost of getting a witness here, you know, I'm just at the beginning of this. I see this happening maybe next August or September, shortly after school starts. I don't know the best time. I haven't had the time yet to research the cost of getting somebody here. I know it has to come, I believe it has to come from England. It may not even need $12,000. So I guess I should add the word max before that. I would hope I could be something that we could draw on, like a line of credit kind of thing, as needed, with supervision by council and or staff. That's all I know right now.
Okay, thank you very much, sir.
Yeah, thanks. Councillor Anstead is next.
Thanks, Mayor Kasenberg, through you. And actually, Councillor Richardson kind of touched on what I was going to talk about as well, John. That was my question regarding if it's just one witness, where are they coming from, costs, all those sorts of things. And I think we'd really want to understand that before we got too much further into this process. So they've done a good job of explaining what you know, I think, so far. So thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Anstead. Councillor Seiler is next.
Thank you, Mayor Todd, and thank you, John. I think that probably this would be something to take to our BIA and make a presentation to them at one of their meetings, and Lisa, maybe talk to her and then see what their feelings are like. And then, because that's where, if you're going to get the businesses involved, that's where you have to start, and then probably bring something back to us, see how they feel about it, and kind of go that route. Thank you.
I'd be glad to do that with the BIA. I have several business owners interested in this. I have no commitments as yet. The best thing that I've had so far is keep me in the loop. And that's from several of the, to use a worn out phrase, the movers and shakers in North Perth. So if going to the BIA would be the next step in moving this along, sign me up.
I think probably that would be the first step. And I know that Mayor Klassenberg, he sits on the BIA and represents us, so I don't know what his feelings are about it, but I would like to see what, talk it with Lisa and see where we go there. Thank you.
Good, okay.
Yes, I think there is good opportunity to take it to the BIA. I think we also want to draw the attention of the Chamber of Commerce to this matter. But the opportunity to have a noble, interesting all-community goal to beat a world record is quite intriguing. So I'm appreciating what you brought forward to us, John, and I'm quite convinced that we can beat that record. It's just a matter of figuring out how we financially put it together at this point. Any other councillors with questions that you're seeing, Clerk, or thoughts?
The main reason that I wanted to try and present this to you this evening is that I understand from your, if I reading your schedule right of meetings, there's nothing in October where I would have had the opportunity to do this. It wouldn't be until November. And time has a way of slipping away on you. And all of a sudden it's next summer. So at least the cards are on the table.
Thank you, Mr. McVicker. We appreciate that. And
Okay.
let us make the introduction to the BIA and also make sure that the chamber is connected to this. And certainly we'll look forward to seeing where this evolves. I think there will be a strong interest, is my guess, in an event that breaks a world record. And like I said, I'm convinced we can do it. It's just a matter of tidying up those logistics. If I might commend to you, I think Council's hint here is that you may want to find out what the costs of bringing the Guinness witness will be.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Firm that up for us so that all in the community know what would be involved in that.
Good. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. McVicker. Good to hear from you. All right, I think that means we can move forward. Councillor, anyone have a wish on this one at this point? Is there any wish that Council would like to express on this? I think we've given Mr. McVicker some guidance.
How do I get out of here?
Okay, well then let's move forward. That brings us to agenda item number 5, reports from departments and key staff. We don't have any written submitted report from the CAO's department, but I do think it might be incumbent on us to call on CAO Snell to talk a little bit about the vaccine certification and what has happened with our local facilities with regard to that, so that council is fully up to date and the community is as well. So CAO Snell, if you don't mind, I welcome you to our meeting and say a few words on that.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. So in compliance with the provincial Province of Ontario regulations, effective on Wednesday, September the 22nd, all patrons, this includes players, coaches, trainers, volunteers, and spectators, 12 years of age or older, wishing to access municipally operated recreation facilities and or our meeting spaces will need to show proof of being fully vaccinated, 2 doses plus 14 days, along with proof of ID. Currently, the ID could include health card, driver's license, birth certificate, citizenship card, permanent resident card, passport, Indian status card, and those would be required upon entry. There are a couple of exemptions. The first exemption, individuals who can't receive the vaccine due to medical exemptions. They will be permitted entry with a valid note from a registered physician or nurse practitioner, or until the medical exemptions can be integrated into the digital vaccination certificate. Of course, children under 12 who currently are unable to receive the vaccine will also be exempted. And then individuals who are under 18 who are entering the facility used for sports and recreation and solely for the purpose of actively participating. So that would be an individual under 18, but they would actually have to be, for example, playing hockey or skating on the ice. They could be admitted, but they could not, say, for example, be a spectator. So individuals can obtain their vaccine receipt from the provincial website. And if any individual is having issues obtaining the receipt or printing the receipt, certainly the North Perth Public Library has offered to help any individual obtain their receipt. Our practices are are common across all the municipalities in Perth County, including Stratford and St. Mary's. And certainly I'm willing to entertain any questions council may have.
Thank you, CAO Snell. I'll ask one question, and that is pertaining to active screening. My understanding is that active screening requirements remain in effect in step 3 of the reopening plan. Can you confirm then that not only do people have to present their vaccine certification or their proof of second dose plus 14 days, but they also must complete a mandatory screening still?
Yes, to my knowledge, we're still in step 3. So yes, they would still have to require the screening questions that are at the entrance of all our municipal facilities at this time.
And further, just to make sure I'm clear, that group of players from 12 to just under 18 who are permitted to enter if their only purpose is to play, I assume they still require active screening.
Yes, they would still be required to not have any of the symptoms in the screening form. That's correct.
Thank you. Clerk Griffiths, does anyone else have questions for CAO Snell on this matter? Okay. Councillors, thank you for indulging CAO Snell with the opportunity to present a little bit about that. This, of course, has come up very quickly, and we've had to sort of rapidly scramble effort to make sure that we are compliant generally with the provincial guidance on this. Next up then is item 5.2, reports from the Clerk's Department. For item 5.2.1, Council is invited to consider an amendment to the North Perth zoning bylaw to support removal of a holding provision attached to an earlier zoning bylaw amendment. The holding provision removal represents fulfillment of earlier mandated conditions by this council and is deemed recommended by staff because the applicant has fulfilled all of those conditions. Removal will facilitate a construction phase for the proposed project, as I understand it. I'm going to call on Mr. Sean Yilmaz, our North Perth planner with the County of Perth, to just clarify what's going on here and answer any questions we might have. Mr. Yilmaz, welcome.
Thank you, and good evening, Mayor Kasenberg, members of council. An application has been submitted in order to remove the holding provision on the remaining lands of the Nickel Subdivision Plan 44M74 and to allow for the construction of residential dwellings. The removal applies to lots 1 to 18 and lots 64 to 69, which are all within the residential 3 zone, which permits single detached and semi-detached dwellings. Additionally, the holding provision will be removed from block 71 and block 72, which are within the residential 5 zone, which permits row house dwellings, as well as semi-detached dwellings. A holding provision was applied to several portions of the recently approved plan subdivision, including the lands within the phase 3 of the development. The provision, identified as -H2, effectively requires evidence that all financial and servicing requirements for the proposed development have been met. Staff can confirm that the financial and servicing requirements have been met for the proposed development. As well, the development conforms to the policies of the County of Perth official plan and meets the requirements of the North Perth zoning bylaw. As such, staff recommends council approve the application to remove the holding provision. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Yilmaz. Councillors, any questions or first comments on this matter? We're not seeing any, so I have a resolution then for our consideration that the Council of the Municipality of North Perth approve the application for a zoning bylaw amendment for the removal of the holding symbol, an H, affecting property described as Block 71, Block 72, lots 1 to 18, and lots 64 to 69 of Registered Plan 44M74, Elma Ward, in the Municipality of North Perth as the conditions for removal have been met. Can I call on Councillor Anstett to be our mover for that one?
Yes, I would move that motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Behrens, will you serve as our seconder?
Yes, I will second that motion. Thank you.
Thanks. Any discussion or debate? Seeing none, let's have that vote.
I'm in favor. Councillor Rothwell, my e-scribe didn't come up. Thank you.
Thank you. With that vote, that's carried then. Thank you very much. Next up, item 5.2.2. Council is invited to consider the draft of a new bylaw to regulate the use of off-road vehicles in North Perth. I'll call at this time on Clerk Pat Fairfelds to outline work on this draft to date and highlight the features of this new draft. Clerk Fairfelds, let me just set my AV so that we don't wind up wrapping up the universe.
Council, at the August 23rd council meeting, I brought a draft bylaw concerning off-road vehicles for discussion. At that time, council did provide me with several amendments and directed staff to proceed with the bylaw as amended. The changes have been provided to you tonight in yellow. I'd like to take the opportunity to go over them. I did listen to the YouTube video of the council meeting, so I feel that I have most of it captured to review with you tonight. So on the first page, the first thing that was required or requested from council was a definition for obstruction. And I believe that we have covered that, as you can see it highlighted in yellow. Moving on then, dealing with various comments that council had provided. The first one is under 3.3. And if you recollect, the comment made by Councillor Richardson during the meeting was that to specify the 50 or the 70 miles per hour, whatever was in the original bylaw, he questioned why that would be stated. So we've changed this to basically as requested, what is posted and definitely regulated. So I think that clears that concern up. As well, I've added, we talked about the fact of hospital grounds, but I didn't think it was well worded in the bylaw. So that's been added as areas that there shall not be the operation of any off-road vehicles. Then moving on as well, under 3.10, added was farmers. And if I can stop and add to this at this point in time for council's consideration, I would like this now to read hunters, farmers, and operators of snow clearing equipment. And you'll understand this further as to why I'm suggesting that as I move along. So just remember under 3.10, I'd like to add operators of snow clearing equipment. Under section 3.11, it did ask for written permission and is requested by council. I have moved that just to permission. And then as we move along, based on thinking a little bit further and as well as a comment earlier today from Mayor Kasenberg, looking at adding the clauses, which is something that had been done in some of the Wellington County municipalities, was actually embedding a clause that was going to exempt farmers and hunters from the bylaw, as well as I did include operators of anyone for snow clearing. But that then very much complicated the rest of the bylaw because we were not necessarily going to want to exempt them from the areas, i.e. in section 3.5, or even dealing with other areas within the bylaw. So what I would like to suggest, even though this is new to you and last minute, as I thought this through clearly today, I have removed 4.2, 4.3, but added to section 3.10 hunters, farmers, and operators of snow clearing. And then moving up to 3.7, where again, I think it deals with, no, not 3.7, 3.4, where it deals with the hours of operation, where it does state if hunting, I'd like to have it state there, if hunting, farming, or the clearing of snow. And that was the difference of hours between 11 and 5. So those are some of the things I'd like council to consider. If you're willing to move forward with these amendments, I do have that very bylaw in front of Mayor Kasenberg. Or if council would like to suggest that I would bring this amended bylaw back to next week's council meeting, I'd be happy to do that as well. I'm willing to answer any questions or take any suggestions at this time from council.
Thanks, Clerk Bertholtz. A good review, and let's see if our colleagues have any questions or first comments about this. Mr. Richardson?
Thank you, and through you, Mayor Katzenberg. Thanks, Pat. It looks like you've done a lot of work on this one. I'm just wondering, when we talk about hunting, I agree with it 100%. I guess it would be up to the OPP, or if anyone who happens to stop someone, could they just say they're hunting, or, and quite possibly, as far as the bylaw goes, we're getting too far into the weeds, but hunting what? Is it in season? If you have your license, if you have your firearm on it, or that's what I'm not sure. Like hunting is pretty broad and vague. Like, is that just like the first week of November, or I'm just saying I agree with it 100%. Don't get me wrong, but I'm just saying anyone could say if they're past those times, well, I'm hunting. But that would have to be substantiated by some sort of certification from the M&R, I would think, and or the OPP. Thanks.
That's this. Go ahead.
And I think that's a great suggestion, is that we could have a statement just basically saying hunting or hunters with the appropriate licensing or the Ministry of Natural Resourcing license. I'm certain that we can certainly add that to your bylaw for clarity. And as far as how this actually would roll out in an understanding of the seasons, I'm sure that CO Snell could share more with this due to his expertise than I could.
CAO Snell, did you want to jump in on this?
Yeah, so certainly I think we could create a definition for hunting, and maybe that's probably the best way to go about this. And I think we would just have to create the language, but I'm thinking clearly they'd have to be participating in the act of hunting, provided with all the other licensings as required by hunters or trappers. So I think we could probably just create a definition in the definitions part of the bylaw that describes hunting.
That sounds like a good strategy. Do we have anyone else queued, Clerk Bertholtz? Councillor Seiler is next.
Thank you, Mayor Todd. Just questioning the time there, the one they have on from 11 p.m. to 6 a.m. Would it be better to go dusk to dawn with the 4 seasons of the year? I am not sure if it'd be nice not to have them when it's dark. I'm just questioning that. That was one of the things that was brought to me.
Okay, that actually sounds like a question that would be useful for our resident hunters, which might be CEO Snell or Councillor Duncan. Why don't we start with CEO Snell, and then I see that Councillor Duncan has comments next, so maybe you can fill in. CEO Snell, what do you think there?
So certainly probably for the farming community and for the hunting community, that probably would need to be expanded. Certainly the farming community, especially during spring and fall harvests, operate well past dusk. Also in the hunting, you're allowed to hunt 1/2 hour after sunset. So we could certainly put in a grace period that permits them to be 1 hour after sunset plus some reasonable time to get home. But that's something we could look at. But I'd be interested in also hearing from the agricultural community of when they might like the times to end.
Yes, thank you. I think Councillor Duncan, you're next. Maybe you have some comments in general about that too, if you would.
Thank you, Mayor Katzenberg. Thanks, Pat. The bylaw looks quite palatable the way it is to me. I think the hours of operation are probably good the way they're listed in the bylaw. As far as the licensing aspect for hunters, I think the definition in our bylaw could just be participating in hunting activities as per Fish and Wildlife Conservation Act regulations. And that would kind of broadly cover anything to do with hunting or trapping, and all of our police officers are also trained to be MNR enforcement officers now, so they actually do have the Fish and Wildlife Conservation Act with them, and they can enforce those regulations as well. So, like I say, I'm quite happy with the bylaw the way it is, especially with the times, and I think we should move forward with it. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Duncan. Okay, Councillor Seiler has a comment back, but maybe what we should do before we hear from Councillor Seiler is invite those at the council table who are farmers if they have any comments. So perhaps Councillor Behrens or Councillor Andreessen, do you have any comments about this with regards to the farming timeline, and are you good with what's in the bylaw, or would you like a greater clarification around that? Councillor Behrens, maybe first. Got anything?
Yeah, I'm just rechecking the bylaw to see what time it was. I can't seem to find it right now.
Yeah, so in 3.4, it says, no person shall operate an ORV in the municipality of North Perth between the hours of 11 p.m. and 6 a.m. or if hunting, farming, or clearing snow, 11 p.m. to 5 a.m.
Well, I'm just going to say that a lot of farming takes place before 6 o'clock in the morning and after 11 o'clock at night. So I'm going to leave it at that.
So this might need a little bit of tightening. Councillor Andreessen, do you have anything on this one you want to contribute?
Yes, I just have to agree with Councillor Behrens. My experience is that farming goes well beyond 11 o'clock at night and well before 5 a.m. So yeah, it's hard to define the actual times for sure, because they may need to access those vehicles to go over to a barn that might need, might have alarms on it, and they might be using an off-road vehicle to do that. So yeah, I'm hesitating around these times. Thank you.
Should we be perhaps removing the restrictions on farmers completely? I'm turning to the clerk so the council knows I'm asking the clerk this question first. But, if it becomes a narrowing game, right? Okay, midnight to 4, 1 a.m. to 3, it gets, sort of reductio ad absurdum, right? We're sort of reducing this to the point where it doesn't make any more sense. Should we just say that the hours don't apply to farmers? Our restrictions don't apply to farming? That's the clerk's suggestion. Anyone have a comment before I bring Councillor Seiler into this one, because he had queued up here in the speakers list? Okay, let's see where that goes then. Councillor Seiler, you're next.
Thank you, Mayor Todd. I guess I'm just, I appreciate everybody's comments there. I'm just trying to protect the urban area a little bit in town with hours of operating in the urban area. So I don't know what everybody's idea is on that. And I don't know what the municipalities around us do with that. Thank you.
Sure. So the clerk Bearfield is telling me that the timing that's listed in this bylaw is quite similar to our neighbors who have a bylaw, who have enacted a bylaw in this matter. Councillor Richardson, you're next.
Thank you. I do believe that especially for the timing, could be also just a quick word, unless exempted, of which the exemption would go to snow removal, hunting, and or farmers. And I think that would be a good idea. And then that would take that category of folks out. And as far as the timing goes, I can certainly appreciate what Councillor Seiler is saying for the timing and the urban folks, but I guess at the end of the day, if you bring it in for these, then there would have to be time limits on snowmobiles when you get into the middle of winter at the other side. I think it would be, I think we can at least try this. We can always bring it back. I'm okay with set times. To do that, 11 p.m. is not crazy and 6 a.m. isn't crazy early. And the only exemptions are going to be people that I can't imagine that would be annoying or intruding on the privacy of urbanites between 11 and 6. So I would think if we could just put a simple exemption, and unless previously exempted for hunting, fishing, or not fishing, but hunting, farmers, or for snow removal. Because I know if people have it for snow removal, they could be even out before 5 o'clock in the morning. That would be the other exemption for that. But I think just providing it with exceptions, and then because I think we'd get you into a bit of a sticky wicket if you have to bring snowmobiles and stuff into it, because we all know that you can hear them in the middle of the night buzzing around, and I think some of them can be a little more offensive and disturbing than what ATVs can be. So, my 2 cents. Thank you.
Okay, just for clarification, Councillor Richardson, the clerk has removed exemptions 4.2 and 4.3 from the bylaw that's sitting before me, as she described earlier. What that does is the 4.2 was going to create a sort of circular problem in the bylaw, which would exempt farmers and hunters from all provisions of the bylaw, essentially, if you read it the way it is written. And so the clerk has removed that. What she's indicated to me in the chamber is that we can add a language that's fairly specific around the exemption for time limits in the exemptions, perhaps for those categories of profession, if you will. So just to be clear, that
Yep, that's exactly what I was referring to. So
yeah,
yep.
I think that's your intent. Thank you. Who is up next? Councillor Behrens. Councillor Behrens.
Yeah, I agree with Councillor Richardson's idea, and I noticed that Councillor Duncan and Councillor Andreessen agree with it too. That's the only comment I wanted to make. Thank you.
Thank you. We're seeing others in the chat indicate their interest in pursuing the strategy of Councillor Richardson. So I think this might warrant another look. Yeah, I think Clerk Bearfelds is telling me she'd like to bring back the bylaw. So this might warrant another look, just because we're talking about enough wording changes between what was published in our council package and what is proposed, both changes made earlier today as a result of queries and comments and input from council tonight, that we should have another look at this. So if you can bring that forward next week, that's all right. I think there's a lot of anticipation in the community about this. The suggestion is that we defer this then for 1 week. That would be the resolution, right? Is that we defer with direction to staff for amendments to this bylaw until the council meeting of September 27th. Let's see, let's turn to my list here. Councillor Duncan, you good with that? Would you serve as mover?
Yes, although I would like to have seen it done tonight, I'm willing to move deferral till next week.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Deputy Mayor Callum, will you second that?
Yeah, I'll second that, but I just want to make it clear to make it even for both the rural and the urban municipalities. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's that seems to have been the will that's expressed a little bit tonight too, is that there needs to be a balance between the interests of urban and rural users. Okay, any further discussion or debate on the motion that's on the floor, which is not the one that's in your council package? It's the one that says we're going to bring back another version next week that's been materially improved. Any discussion or debate on that? All right, let's have that vote. Yeah, we need to bring back. There we go. Thank you.
Councillor Rothwell, my e-scribe's not working. I'm in favor.
Okay, thank you. And with that, we have nine votes. All in attendance have voted in favor. Carried. Thank you. I'm currently a distracted mayor tonight. There was a bylaw that went along with the last item, 5.2.1, that we should address. Yes, a little slap of the hand here. And it reads as follows, Council. that bylaw number 96-2021, being a bylaw to amend the North Perth zoning bylaw number 6-ZB-1999 as amended, be introduced, read and considered read, first, second, and third time, and be finally passed, and that the said bylaw be signed by the mayor and the clerk and sealed with the seal of the corporation. Councilor Richardson, can I call on you to be our mover for that one?
Yes, I will move that. Thank you.
Thanks. And Councilor Rothwell, will you be our seconder for that one?
Yes, I'll second the motion.
Thanks. Any discussion or debate on that? This is 5.2.1 in the bylaw part. All right. We're not seeing any indication of that. Let's have that vote. And that is carried. All right, thank you. So now we're skipping down to the next section of our meeting is item 5.3, reports from the programs department. We don't have reports coming from that department this evening, but we know that they're all working very diligently as recreational programs for the fall are ramped up. Brings us next to item 5.4, reports from our facilities department. Again, no report there, but we know that they too are working very hard in various capacities in our arenas, especially these days. And no doubt the pool stuff is starting to be eyed as something that needs to be taken care of for winter. That moves us along to finance. Item 5.5, we have no report from finance this evening. Likewise, we can move on to Environmental Services Department, item 5.6, and we have no reports from them this evening. Everybody is busy and not bringing reports, which is just fine as long as you don't need council's input. And that brings us next to item 5.7, reports from our manager of operations. For item 5.7.1, council is provided with a brief report further to its earlier request about matters related to parking adjacent to the traffic and parking experiment in progress at Listow's primary intersection at Wallace and Main. I'm going to invite Manager of Operations Lyndon Couch to make comments that he believes will help support our understanding. Mr. Couch, welcome.
Thank you, Mayor Kasenberg, members of council. The trial did start on August 18th, and it had impacts on stop bars and turning radiuses, intersections, and various traffic functions in the core that we've been discussing over time. Specifically last week, parking was addressed, and my comments are brief in the report with a couple images that I'd like to forward or ask you to pay attention to. A total of 7 stalls were removed. I can show you these first 5. These first 5 were removed due to the southbound turning motion if you're coming off of Wallace as a large truck. That motion is one that did impact these parking stalls in the past. We moved the stop bar, and you can see the broadened median in yellow on Main Street now as trucks turn that corner. That broadened or widened median was put there because that stop bar was brought forward about 3 to 4 meters. And there was concern that the trucks might conflict with cars in that area. The widened median makes it safer. The more separation we have between traffic, actually in the previous condition, but this condition as well, was a good thing. By widening that median area, it brought trucks and other traffic tighter to those parking stalls. Their removal was a temporary one during the study or during the trial to take a look at what the safety implications are there. So I might say that we're waiting for what will be the end of September and probably a public meeting on October 4th, and then a recommendations going through council that will talk about what we specifically do with those 5 spots. There's a couple points I'll point out just about the 5 spots. Some might be able to be reinstated depending on what we're observing with truck movements. The consultants are coming back to review that one more time. The stalls do also interfere fairly significantly with the alleyway that comes up by the hardware store. So that was part of the review as well in terms of trying to see oncoming traffic when you're coming out of that spot. That was the other concern. That's why they're listed as not there, and we painted them out. As I said, we can reinstate some of those. I'm going to wait for the consultants to do another further review, bring it back in a couple weeks to you. We can move further down to the next area, and that's the area that is more in front of the delegation last week, the jeweler store, as well as that corridor. Just as a point of clarification, the handicap spot was moved when we initiated the study to the west to where the yellow barred handicap spot is, showing where the temporary location of it is. So it wasn't removed, it was moved. However, we had a student incentive, a student program for painting poles on signs in the downtown core that happened the week later. Those signs were removed that indicated the handicap spot was there. So the delegation was absolutely right. There was no handicap spot there. It was reviewed right after that. We saw that signs had been removed and it was reinstated. So that is its temporary location for the trial. Wasn't removed. It still does allow handicap access and accessible parking in that spot. The other two spots were removed as outlined in the report, mainly because the through traffic that cuts tight against those two red spots that are X'd out is so tight to them that it's considered a hazard and dangerous. That was observed by all the consultants that looked at it earlier on. And they simply said that they'd have to be removed for safety, both in the previous condition, but this condition as well. They can better describe it, and they're actually taking some images and they've shot some video, and that'll be information that they'll be bringing forward as well. So those two spots were recommended to be removed as well. They created false queues for through traffic as well in that area. If you've been down there and you understand what I'm saying, with those spots there, it didn't allow traffic to get into the straight through lane. It does much better now and it functions quite well. I was observing it today with the traffic engineer, and again, things were running fairly smoothly. So that's the summary of the temporary removal of stalls. Those 7, the 2 specifically with the one handicap moving, are recommended to be removed probably in previous conditions and this condition. The other 5 are still under review, coming back in October. I may have lost my audio.
We can hear you, Mr. Couch.
Okay, great. No, that would be the summary. There were no other impacts to traffic in terms of the parking access from the study in the trial period. Wallace South did not have on-street parking. I probably am open to questions then in terms of what I've summarized.
Thank you, Mr. Couch. Councillor Rothwell is first.
Thank you, Mayor Todd, and thank you, Lyndon, for your report. I, like others, have probably received phone calls from members of the public regarding concerns highlighted by Mr. Baklar in his presentation. My question for you, Lyndon, is the 2 spots that you talked about west of Wallace Ave North there on the south side of Main Street. They were permitted previously, and there is in fact no change in the geometries on the eastbound traffic. Is that correct? There's no change in geometries there?
There was no change in geometries there whatsoever, no.
So I'm just wondering if they were previously there and put there by the municipality, how in fact were they put there if there was a concern?
I'm not sure how they were originated. The concerns came up basically from the design perspective from the consulting engineer, but also observation. Those spots continued to block traffic heading into the through lane and always have, and created queues that went into the Argyle pedestrian crosswalk and also back to Livingston. So with those removed, it allows especially the smaller vehicles to cut over into the through lane. Previous queues were there simply because of some of those obstructions at some of those times. And that's the information from the consultant. We did a review in advance and sat there actually for several hours observing traffic flows. It was a pre-existing condition. It created a very tight margin between the through traffic and the side doors of those cars in those 2 spots, especially with one being a handicap spot. It was considered in a very hazard location. So it was moved back further to the west where there wouldn't be the tight conflict of the cars cutting over into the through lane. It basically creates a more open, safer conveyance of the traffic that's going straight through, and it reduces something that is called in the report false queues. They don't need to be there if the cars aren't parked there. And that's what we're observing as we run the trial now. Although there was some illegal parking in that area, especially with couriers, we're noticing that it's been a bit of an improvement. And again, that'll be summarized probably for the public meeting, which I can give you a date for. And we'll be giving that information to the public, but also to council when we bring final recommendations forward.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Seiler's next.
Thank you, Mayor Todd. Just a couple of notes, Lyndon. Thank you for your report. Just the first one is the no left turn there coming off of Main Street to go back to Wallace South. I've noticed that people are having a hard time with the visibility of where the no left turn sign is. Would it be possible to put it up on the bar where the red light is? So that people are looking at the light and then they see you can leave the other two signs there just to have another sign up beside it so they see it, have good visibility for that, because I think some people are missing it and they're still turning left.
Yes, on behalf of the mayor, we've actually looked at exactly doing that. That's one of the one of the points that we made of what can be changed, either larger signs, putting them directly on the arm, if that's allowable, and if we can find the right brackets, and also an advanced sign that would show the same information. So yes, indeed, we'll try and make that clear when cars do stop and attempt a left because they haven't seen the sign. It blocks significant flow. So we'll be making that change if the trial is to continue. We're looking at ordering those parts now.
Thank you. My second question is with those parking spots, 4 or 5 on Main Street there, and with trucks turning, would it be, maybe you could take this to your consultants, the stop on Wallace Street South for trucks coming down there, if you were to put that stop up maybe a little bit, that would give the trucks making the right-hand turn a bit more room, so they wouldn't, that those parking spots wouldn't come into play. Like if you were to move the stop back maybe so many feet, that would give the trucks more nose area to make the right-hand turn, and it might help us with putting those parking spots back. That's just something I'd like to get to know what the consultant would think of doing something like that. Thank you.
The one movement is the southbound left turn. If you're on Wallace going south and you're making your southbound left, I think that's the one you're talking about as you then would turn onto Main Street. We did back off that stop bar 9 meters. It could go back 13 meters. We're taking a look at it to see if that allows more room for the trucks to make those radiuses. But again, it was the widening of that median on Main Street that kept those trucks separated from the cars, that does push them over when you draw it on paper into those parking stalls, or at least one of them for sure. And that's what we're reviewing. So I'd like the traffic engineer to come back and they'll comment back on that on the 4th, see what can be reinstated and changed. But I will also bring back the setting back of the stop bar, perhaps even further, to accommodate what you're saying.
Okay, thank you. I just I know that I've myself with driving the truck, that if you had a little bit more nose room there to go right, it gives you you can stay in tighter a little bit so go ahead and make the turn.
Okay.
Anyhow, just something I just was wondering there. So thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Seiler. I have 2 questions as well. The first is with regards to the total parking allotment that you're aware of on Main Street in particular. How many spots have we lost by taking out those 7? What's the proportion of spots lost?
Thank you. There's about 370 downtown municipal spots. About just over 100 are on the streets, or 130, I believe, but I may be incorrect with that. 75 of them are on Main Street. So of the 75 on-street parking stalls, 7 were removed. And again, it was for safety concerns or perceived safety concerns that could happen during the trial to try and avoid any conflicts. So we'll bring that back to the consultant, but you're looking at about 10% of the ones on Main, and whatever 7 spots of the 370 are in terms of the downtown core specifically. When that study was done in 2016, that's what we found for numbers.
Okay, thank you. And my second question, it seems to be a common enough question in the community, People seem quite concerned by the painting over of various lines and so forth. And they tend to present with the question or the suggestion that it looks very permanent, and it might be difficult to sort of restore the painted lines and other changes that have been made around this intersection should we decide that there's some restoration to previous function. Can you comment on that? Like, why are people concerned about that?
Just to expand on that slightly, we've had over 250 respondents to the one survey that we've done. We've also had a commercial survey go out now, and we're running a public meeting coming up. And yes, there's been quite a few comments about the cost to paint and the difficulty of making those changes. But if we need to make any more changes, modifying parking stalls, modifying the emergency lane, even the pylons that we put up, it's a 1 to 2 day project to actually make full changes if we've got dry road conditions. It's really work we do every day. The painting that out was literally done with the same roller you're going to use to paint your walls, just using traffic paint. And then our new spray buggy will be able to reinstate lines wherever needed come the end of the trial, whether it's kept or whether it has to be removed. We have plans to go in either direction depending on council's decision.
Thank you. I was quite concerned about the number of people who've tried to suggest that this looks really permanent when in fact we're in the midst of an experiment and wanted to find the technical answers around whether it's possible to reverse some of the changes and how difficult that would be. And so you've clarified that for me. I appreciate that. Any other questions from council at this point? Councillor Anstedt, I think.
Thanks, Mayor Kasenberg, through you. Thanks, Lyndon, again for the report. Really appreciate it. Know that this has been a big project. I just had a question about the handicap spaces and the accessible spaces. Obviously, we do have members in our community that need those spaces. I'm just curious, though, is there such thing as a legislative requirement to say how many we need to have every so many feet? I'm not familiar with that, but maybe you could speak on that.
There are guidelines specifically on that. So we're doing a count. We have numerous on street, the ones that are on the street, and numerous in the parking lots as well. It's the spacing of them and how readily available they are per the number of total spots we have in the core. That's something I was talking to the consultant about today, and we will review that and update in terms of whether we put more in and where they would go. So regardless of what happens with the one-way trial, that's something for review. There are guidelines that we need to follow when we're doing a recount of it.
Okay, thank you.
And next is Councillor Andreessen.
Thank you, through you, Mayor Kasenberg. This is such a quandary, this whole issue with traffic. I can certainly see the benefits in terms of moving our traffic through our core. But I do really empathize with our business owners. I realize that there is municipal parking, throughout that downtown core, but on that main street itself, which many people want to access, we are reducing that parking, and I'll be honest, it really concerns me. I feel that it could be an additional barrier for people accessing those businesses because of the lack of on-street parking. So it's such a quandary, unfortunately, in terms of what we're dealing with and in the configuration of the streets in our core. It's quite concerning. I don't have any answers, but I'm certainly concerned about it. Thank you.
I think it's important to just restate the consultants are coming back. What was removed purely for safety, and they'll be able to make comment on what modifications we could make to make some of the removed stalls possibly safer and reinstated, as I've said. And they know this is a critical issue. Actually, it's come up right from the start and clearly needs to be addressed by them in terms of safety. And I really have to default to them and have asked that they specifically address the parking very clearly in terms of their recommendations when they come back. We'll run the next couple of weeks and then, as I say, have another public format and then bring final recommendations in front of council. Right now, it's as safe as it needs to be to run the trial and recommend it to stay that way. but moving ahead, they'll focus on this and be able to bring it back for what are a lot of decisions in terms of traffic flow versus access and other issues. So yeah, they're bringing it back, and they're going to specifically address it for council and for the public, actually.
Thanks, Mr. Couch. I find myself, as Councillor Andreessen and others, obviously a little bit concerned that the public is concerned, especially we don't want harms to our business community at this time. I would be interested, and I don't know whether you've factored this into your business survey at all, Mr. Couch. But it would be also interesting to know whether PC Connect has driven any new traffic by bus into our downtown that has had a positive impact on our businesses. So, there's challenges on the one hand, and that some parking spots have been removed in the interest of safety. But on the other hand, we have this new tool that's come to our community, and that's in theory bringing more people here. So, what's the impact of those mutually? And I don't know that it's relevant. I'm probably taking it in a rabbit hole, but I do think that there's some worthy question there about the impacts of our new public transit system as well. Do we have any other questions or comments? We're not seeing any. So I have a resolution, Council, that reads as follows: that the Council of the Municipality of North Perth receive the information from staff and await the Public Information Center and final report from the consultant and recommendations on the trial. Any modifications that are finalized by Council can be implemented at that time. Can I call on Councillor Seiler to be our mover for that one?
I so move it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Andreessen, will you be our seconder?
Yes, I'll second that motion.
Thanks. Any discussion or debate further? All right. We're not seeing any, so let's have that vote. My screen just died. Let's see if I can get myself in here. And with that, that is carried. Thank you very much, Council. We have no report from the Fire Chief and Fire Department this evening. That brings us to item 6 on our agenda. For item 6.1, councillors, are there any reports you would like to ask of staff or our committees? Usual process for seeking the floor. Are we seeing anything, Clerk Bartholz? No? Okay. Item 7, we have received no additional core items of correspondence that are drawn to our attention. That brings us to item 8 on our agenda, which is allows council to consider and enact bylaws. We have 3 bylaw proposals for our consideration tonight. Item 8.1, we have. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, Councillor Rothwell, did you want the floor?
Yes, thanks very much, Mayor Todd. Things seem to be a little slow here on the connectivity end. I had a question here just in terms of reports coming forward. I just want confirmation from staff, Mr. Couch, I believe, in terms of when we are anticipating the traffic engineers to come forward with the discussion of the bypass. There's been many questions and associated with that, and I believe we said it was coming in September, is my recollection. But if you could give us a date, then certainly the members of council and the public would appreciate that. Thank you.
Mr. Rothwell, I think you're referring to the transportation master plan. And Mr. Couch, did you want to comment on the progress and the timeline for that?
Yes, just to be brief, the middle of December to the first week of December for the final reports coming to council. There'll be a public meeting on it in October, but we're trying to separate these two issues because we really do feel, although the consultants are engaging each other, that the public is engaging on the wrong item when we run our surveys at times. So we're trying to separate the two. But to answer the question from the councillor, indeed in December, the final drafts in front of council and final reports, and then a public meeting in October. That date is still to be set, but I can confirm it later, probably in the next 2 weeks.
Let me just clarify that.
Thank you.
I want to make sure that we understand that, Mr. Crouch. So in October, we're having a public meeting. I know that we're planning a PIC for the sake of the Wallace Main intersection change. And is that also considering all the rest of the transportation master plan?
No, if I could answer, October 4th will be the downtown core one-way trial PIC. Later in October, there will be a transportation master plan PIC separate of it. We want to put a couple of weeks between the two of them, and then final reports with public information, everything else will be accumulated and then brought to council in December. So you'll see the transportation master plan in December. We do have a draft of the majority of the transportation master plan right now that's under review. So the public will see the draft and some of the findings through a public information center as well as council later in October. Final reports due in December.
Thank you. And that means that we will see the report from the consultant about the downtown intersection well before that December deadline.
Yes, we're targeting October 18th for the downtown block report to council that Monday.
Thank you. I just wanted to be sure I was crystal clear because we certainly want the media to report this in a straightforward way. But we have two processes unfolding and they each have slightly different timelines and slightly different expectations, but there are public input sessions for both. Thank you. Does that, Councillor Rothwell, anything further on that one?
Nothing further, but again, just with the clarifications that you've made, it is a very important project. We've broken it down into several different segments. We've relied on the traffic engineers for the development of the crosswalks, for the one-way streets, certainly the trial, but also in front of the public school in Listowel, and also the official plan amendment changes and so on. So we've had various elements of the work from the engineers on this, but looking forward for the full report. And I would just suggest that the draft of the report at some time should be available for members of council so that we're well aware of the information coming forward through to the public information session as well. I think that's important for us to go in to this project with our full understanding. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Rothwell. Noted, and staff will endeavor to work with those comments. They seem appropriate. Okay, so let's turn our attention to bylaw that is referred to as item 8.1 on our agenda. Reads as follows: that bylaw number 93-2021 being a bylaw to provide for the abandonment of a portion of the 17th concession municipal drain Elma Ward be introduced, read, and considered read a first, second, and third time, and be finally passed, and said bylaw be signed by the mayor and the clerk and sealed with the seal of the corporation. Councillor Anstett, can I call on you to be our mover for that one?
Yes, I would move that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Burns, will you be our second?
Yes, I will second that motion. Thanks.
Any discussion or debate on this matter? Seeing none, let's have that vote. And that is carried. Thank you very much. Next up is item 8.2. This bylaw will amend the North Perth traffic bylaw, adding information about a new pedestrian crossover. Are there any questions or concerns from councillors before we consider the bylaw resolution? Seeing none, I have a resolution that reads as follows: the bylaw number 94-2021 being a bylaw to amend bylaw 78-2016, the traffic bylaw, be introduced, read, and considered read a first, second, and third time, and be finally passed, and said bylaw be signed by the mayor and the clerk and sealed with the seal of the corporation. Can I call on Councillor Duncan to be our mover for that?
Yes, I'll move that.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Kellum, will you serve as our seconder?
Yes, I will second that motion. Thank you.
Thanks. Any discussion or debate on that one? Seeing none, let's have that vote. And we're missing one. We think it's Councillor Andreessen. Councillor Andreessen, what say you?
I'm in favor, thank you.
Thanks. So with that vote, that is carried. Thank you. And now let's move to item 8.3, bylaw draft for consideration that bylaw 95-2021, being a bylaw to amend Schedule A of bylaw 161-2018, be introduced, read, and considered read a first, second, and third time and be finally passed, and that the said bylaw be signed by the mayor and the clerk and sealed with the seal of the corporation. This one is an appointment to the board of the Listowel BIA. Can I call on Councillor Richardson to be our mover for that?
I will move that. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Rothwell, will you serve as seconder?
Yes, I'll second the motion.
Thank you. Any discussion or debate on this one? Seeing none, let's have that vote. We're missing.
I'm in favor. Councillor Rothwell, that e-scribe didn't pop up. Thank you.
Thank you. So with Councillor Rothwell's vote, that is carried. That moves us along to item 9 on our agenda. Are there any councillors wishing leave to give notice of motion tonight? We're not seeing any, so let's move on to item 10.1. Are there any announcements that would be of benefit to our community or that reflect well on North Perth at this time? Again, if you'd like to contribute, enter into the chat window and we'll call in order. Are you seeing anything? Okay, thank you. That moves us along to agenda item number 11. We have no matters for consideration in a closed session meeting of council tonight, which means for item 12, we have no report to offer at this time. Council, as a mandated good practice, acts near the end of its meeting agenda to confirm all of its actions and business of its meeting through what's called the confirmatory bylaw. I have the draft of the confirmatory bylaw number 97-2021, which reads as follows. The bylaw number 97-2021 being a bylaw to confirm generally previous actions of the Council of the Municipality of North Perth be introduced, read, and considered read a first, second, and third time, and be finally passed, and that said bylaw be signed by the mayor and the clerk and sealed with the seal of the corporation. Councillor Seiler, can I call on you to be our mover for that one?
Yes, I'll move that. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Andreessen, will you be our seconder?
Yes, I'll second that motion, thank you.
Thank you very much. Any discussion or debate on that one? Let's have that vote. And Councillor Rothwell, what say you? And that is it. So that's carried. We have all 9 votes there.
I'm in favor. Yes, it should be in. Thank you.
Thanks. We got it. Thank you. All right. So that is carried, which means we've come to the hour for adjournment. Councillors, we have completed deliberation and taken action on the business that came before us tonight. I have a motion to adjourn that reads as follows. The council meeting adjourns at 8:24 p.m. to meet again for general council business on Monday, September 27th, 2021 at 7 p.m. Can I call on Councillor Anstedt to be our mover for that?
Yes, I would move that motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Behrens, will you be our seconder?
Yes, I will second that. Thanks.
Thanks. That's not debatable, so let's have that vote.
I'm in favor. My e-scribe didn't work. Thank you.
Councillor Anstedt. And with that, we have 9 votes. All those in attendance voting to confirm that we are adjourned, council. We are adjourned. This council will meet again next Monday night on that channel, same bat technologies. And I hope you have a great week. Thank you.